Welcome back, everyone. Glad you could join me here today, once again, on the Cabral Concept. This is episode 2224. We're going to be leaving all of the show notes, all of the takeaways, all of the research at stephencabral.com/2224. And I'll also be linking up the, let's call it the sister show to this one, What Your Poop Says About You. Today's show is What Your Pee Says About You or Says About Your Health. So the reason why I want to do these shows is because we want to have a little fun here as well on the Cabral Concept, teaching about your health, so we can have a little fun, but also teach you the deeper meaning of what this is. Because to be honest with you, what comes out of your body in terms of your urine or your bowel movement says a lot about what's going on the inside. And since you can't lab test every single day, what we can do is we can say, okay, what's the quality of our eyes? What's the quality of our skin? What's the quality of our tongue? What about our skin over the entire body? What about our bowel movements? What about saliva secretion? What about urine? And I'm telling you right now, your body's always telling you. It's telling you on a daily basis how you are doing. Are you staying balanced or are you not? And as you're moving further away from balance, that is when we move closer to disease. So our job is to be able to see the warning signs before that rain barrel gets all the way filled up and it begins to overflow. And then we're diagnosed with the autoimmune condition, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, cancer, etc. So let's work on the warning signs. Today, I'm going to go over with you all the deeper meanings of your urine. And not just, well, if you have clear urine, it means this. And if you have dark urine, it means this. We're actually going to go through the color of the urine. Yes, we'll get that out of the way first. Then we're going to say, what does it mean if urine's cloudy? What if it has a smell to it? What if it has blood in it? What if it's painful when you urinate? What about frequency of urination and so much more? So we'll go through all of that today. This will just be one of those episodes I can refer back to, and hopefully you can share it with others as well. I mean, this is common information. I shouldn't say it's common information. These are common questions that most people have, and they should be able to get easy answers to. That is why we do the show. We can have an archive at stephencabral.com/podcast that you can search any topic you want. There's over 223 shows now, with this being 2,224, that you can simply just type in your keyword. What is it? And hopefully get honest and true answers to be able to lead you forward to rebalancing your body, getting healthy, losing the weight if you need to, gaining the weight if you need to, and living longer, stronger. All right, let's get started. What your pee says about you or in your health. So first of all, your urine is 95% water. When we talk about a bowel movement, that's over 50% bacteria, okay? Today, urine, 95% water. But what about that other 5%? You know, that matters as well. That is what we're talking about today, because it can make all the difference in the world with your health. So what we want to look for is essentially the 7 items that I just mentioned. Okay, and I'll give you additional follow-ups as well and additional shows to listen to. But the first one is the color of your urine. All right, you probably heard it said before that if you have pale yellow urine, that's an indicator of good hydration. And that is the truth. So if you wake up in the morning, first, urine is very, very important. If you wake up in the morning and you see darker urine, we're talking about like darker yellow or even more towards like orangey or brownish, it's a sign of dehydration. Dehydration overnight. Maybe you sweat a lot overnight. Maybe you didn't consume enough water after dinner or before dinner, right? Not necessarily during the meal, but that's what we want to look for. We want to look for pale yellow urine. That means you can still tell that it's a tinge of yellow. If it's completely clear, it can often mean overhydration. Okay, so it can mean that you're taking in too much water. And if it's not mineral water, you could actually be washing out a lot of the minerals that you need. And potentially, if you run hypoglycemic, you could be lowering your blood sugar to a greater level. So the goal is always hydration. It's not overhydration. We'll link up a show today on how much water you need to consume for your body. We're going to be linking up a lot of follow-up shows today at stephencabral.com/2224. Okay. The next one is this. So pale yellow, we'll call it perfect. If it starts to become a darker yellow, you're moving more towards dehydration. Not there yet, okay? Just yellow urine is not dehydration, you're moving there. If it's neon yellow, that's often a sign of B vitamin intake. There's all sorts of different indicators. Oh, it's B1, it's B12, it's this. many B vitamins can discolor your urine. All right, so just keep that in mind, that if it's neon yellow, it will never be, again, if you're taking your B vitamin, it's not going to be clear because you're urinating out the water-soluble vitamins. And as long as you're not overdoing your B vitamins, that's not an issue, okay? So what about more amber colored urine? That's more of an orangey color, like that salt lamp right behind me if you're watching this on video, okay? That's more of an amber color, and that definitely indicates more dehydration. If we're moving towards maybe a brown or pink or even a reddish color, all of those could indicate blood in the urine, and we're going to be talking about that in just a couple points for now. So anything towards brown is going to indicate dehydration, kidney issues, potentially liver issues. Now, again, here's the disclaimer. We are not here to diagnose any conditions, treat any conditions, or cure any conditions, right? All the different things we are not doing, okay? But obviously, bring this to your medical doctor if you start to see any of the ones that are not healthy. Not a darker yellow, we're talking about brownish, right? And then, of course, red, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So there's a couple other ones, such as maple syrup urine disease. That's actually what it's called. It's typically first diagnosed in newborns or infants. It's, again, rough math, like 1 in 190 to 200,000 newborns. So it's not like it's uncommon. But, I mean, it's really not. So it is something to be aware of. And of course, you would bring it to your doctor right away, and they'll be able to help. Okay, so another one is going to be blue or green urine. Now, why would you ever see blue or green urine? Well, a lot of this can happen with food dyes, sometimes not typical, but sometimes even with spirulina, meaning like food dyes, not the healthy ones, like you're literally reading the ingredients and it's saying blue or green. You never want paint in your beverages. Never. I mean, there are even supplement companies that put it in their supplements. And I consult with supplement companies to try to make them healthier. And I asked them, I'm like, why are you putting red or blue in your supplements when this is supposed to be a health or longevity-based supplement? They're like, well, it makes this cool blue color that's better for marketing. And I'm saying, okay, well, what's the goal here? Is the goal to make a whole lot of money, or is the goal to help a whole lot of people? And why don't you do both, but also help the people, not hurt them at the same time? So anyway, I digress. All right. So and then the last one I would give you is this. Orange can be from a lot of beta-carotene. If you take in a lot of carrot juice, it could be orangey. That's light orange, not dark. And then also I see quite often in my practice a light pink. And you might think, well, that's blood. But if you had a lot of beets, beet juice, beet products, or actual beets, red beets can actually turn the urine a little bit red. And they can also do that for your stool as well. All right. So just keeping those in mind. All right. So that's the color of the urine. Feel free to let me know if there's any questions. I'm always happy to help. Leave them right below on Instagram or YouTube, and we are happy to help. And you can also post your questions at cabralsupportgroup.com. All right. What about cloudy urination? Why would your urine look a little white, a little cloudy? All right, a couple of things that come right to mind. Again, in my private practice, I work with a lot of women, a lot of men. Men can have prostatitis, okay? So what does that mean? Inflammation of the prostate. Doesn't mean prostate cancer, okay? But it means inflammation of the prostate. It's inflamed, it's swollen, and the prostate actually leads to prostate secretions. This could come out and look like a white discharge. And many men are like, what is that? You know, it's very strange that it's coming out when I'm urinating. It might look like semen or something like that. And that's it basically is. It's prostate secretion. And so this oftentimes happens when if I'm working with a man and he's saying this, he's like, well, it happens when I get a virus or get run down. I said, I understand. It's just additional inflammation in your body. And that inflammation goes to the weak points of our body. And for this individual, well, maybe it's prostate. Okay. So it can be prostate-based issues. Obviously you can have this checked out. And in women, it could be bacterial vaginitis or even a yeast-based infection. Okay. So it's important to understand that all of this can end up as cloudy urine or even white discharge. And a lot of times, especially with women, it could even be like white blood cells, and all of that can make it look cloudy. I would say along those same lines, sexually transmitted diseases, certainly there can be an excess of white blood cells that would show up on a urine dipstick if we're talking about urinary tract infections, if we're talking about, which again, so if we look at prostate, bacterial vaginosis, yeast overgrowth for women, yeast infections, urinary tract infections, all of these things can be white blood cells, leukocytes, things like that that are now coming out in the urine. Important to look at that. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes dehydration could be an issue leading to kidney issues. The kidneys then have inflammation, and that can be a sign of inflammation of the kidneys, or believe it or not, even kidney stones. Okay, so this is why it's so important. It's not just about the color of your urine, it's the quality of the urine as well. That's why these things are really key. So if you have anything going on with your urine, or again, a lot of people will never talk about this, share it with a friend, right? Share it with family. Let them at least listen, say, okay, now let me be aware. If my urine is just not clean, pale yellow, then it's not balanced. I'm not balanced internally. It's not just your kidneys and your bladder and your urethra or your urinary tract. It's actually the whole body, right? Okay. So the third one is this. What if you do have blood in your urine? It's showing up as a red or it's a brownish in color. This is actually red blood cells that can be leaking from the urinary tract or into the urinary tract or being filtered by your kidneys through the bladder into the urinary tract. Okay. So this is really important because we're always looking at kidneys. So if you listen, and I wish I had I do have my model right here. So if you're watching this on video, you can see the kidneys. All right. So here's my buddy Walter. I always use him when I'm teaching inside the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute. And we are going to take out his liver, his stomach, and his intestines. And then behind all of that, again, you can listen in, obviously, or watch this on video at StephenCabral.com/2224 or right on YouTube at Stephen Cabral. So here are the two kidneys back here. They are essentially in your lower back, right above your hip bones, okay? Those kidneys, with your adrenals right on top, are going to filter directly into the bladder, okay? And then that's going to come out the urethra for you to urinate. So that's how the kidneys start things. They're basically filtering the blood, and they are then moving things through two large tubes down to the bladder, which is right near the pelvic area, and then out of the body through the urethra. So what we want to look for is always, is there any type of kidney-based disease? Are there any kidney stones? Is there a bladder infection? Is there a urinary tract infection, right? Because that's all of the things that could be inflamed, then leading to red blood cells, and those ended up in your urine. All right. So the brighter the urine, this is, again, I'm not providing any diagnosis, but the brighter the red can often be closer to a urinary tract or bladder-based issue. Sometimes the darker means it's been in there a little bit longer. This also goes for stool as well. If it's darker black or darker red, it can be, okay, something was going on upstream in the colon or intestines. If it's more bright red when the stool ends up in the toilet, that can be more of a hemorrhoid or some type of end of the colon based issue. Okay. So that is mainly, that's the reasons for blood in the urine. The fourth one is, does your urine smell? Does it smell strange? It should have no smell. All right. So urine should not smell. So sometimes urine smells based on the supplement you're taking. It could be vitamins. Minerals won't smell, but it could be vitamins. It could be, some type of flavors or things added to the supplement that of course would not be natural. Like that wouldn't be anything natural. I'm trying to think of something else. Herbs. Yeah. Herbs could make your urine smell a little bit like kind of dirt, like nature, but not too often. And then of course we have foods, right? So a lot of people call it asparagus pee, right? So when you break down the certain enzymes and proteins in asparagus, that can often have a little bit of a smell like asparagus. That takes about a day or so to remove. Not even, probably 12 hours if you're hydrated enough. If you're dehydrated, or you are moving even sometimes more towards ketosis, the urine can smell a little bit more like ammonia. So if you know the smell of ammonia, it can smell more like that, like almost acid is not the right word. I can't think of any other thing to describe ammonia except ammonia. And you know ammonia when you smell it, right? We're not talking about super potent, but you're like, oh, well, that smells a little strange. That can be dehydration. Sometimes a urinary tract infection, which I know it's strange, can actually smell a little bit sweet. So if you've ever had if yourself or any of your children ever had a urinary tract-based infection and it smelled a little bit sweet, the urine, that can be from the urinary tract infection. Even type 2 diabetes can smell the same. So if it's a little bit too much sugar, it can smell a little bit fruity, almost like fructose, which is coming out, or sugars. That certainly can be an issue with diabetes. And then oftentimes, if it's foul smelling, if it does not smell good, if it smells like bacteria, that like foul, then that can be more of a bacterial issue, bacterial vaginosis, yeast infection, or sexually transmitted disease. Okay. So these are all issues of why the urine may smell. Yeah, that's pretty much all of them that I can think about. Sulfur would be another one, a little bit more of a sulfur smell. Could be you're on a detox. You had a lot more detox-based products moving through your body, like N-acetylcysteine, methionine, taurine, glutathione. It's possible, but most likely that's going to be all removed and moved through the liver, actually into the colon instead of through the urine. All right, the fifth point is, what if your urination is painful? All right, well, if it's painful, we're looking at most of the time a urinary tract infection. All right, so there's some type of bacteria that has gotten into the kidneys or the bladder or along the urinary tract. Now, I have a podcast, I believe, on how to help rebalance healthy urinary tract, right? We can't provide any disease treatment plans, but this is something that I've dealt with, thousands of times in my practice, and we are able to help this naturally as well. So this can be any type of inflammation of the urethra, inflammation of the kidneys, inflammation of the bladder, inflammation even of the vagina or anywhere in the urethra. It can be sexually transmitted diseases. It can be bacteria, as I said. Any of these things can cause painful urination. And the same goes for men, particularly with prostate-based issues, especially if there's a lot of swelling or fullness of the prostate. That can be prostatitis, which is inflammation of the prostate. Anytime it ends in itis, it means inflammation, or it could be, again, we're not saying it's prostate cancer, but certainly that's why these things are important to check out. I will say, having 2 daughters, that when you put them in the tub, when they're little sometimes, if they get a little bit of soap or anything like that into the urethra, whether it's, it's just into the urethra essentially when they're bathing, it can cause burning. And that burning is oftentimes, again, just from the soap and the irritation. Now, believe it or not, it irritates the opening, but it also changes the pH. And so what they need to do, even though it's painful, is they're going to flush obviously with water, but then they have to urinate to kind of reacidify that urethra and that tract. Okay. The 6th reason that your pee may be imbalanced is how often you urinate, right? So it's like, well, how frequently do you urinate? And so there's no necessarily set amount. If you check out my podcast on how much water that you need to drink, the average amount, as we look at that, I go by each individual. If you have a higher blood pressure, okay, you can consume more. If you have lower blood pressure, not as much. But, typically it falls around about half your body weight in ounces of water per day. Look at your body weight in pounds, take it in half. That's about the number of ounces you need. And then you divide that by an 8-ounce glass. So that's why most people need somewhere between 8 and 12 glasses of water per day. That also then changes based on how much you sweat and exercise. So all of that matters, right? All of it matters. And then there's this, and then again, on that show, I include whether smoothies are or coffee is and all the different things. And again, we'll link that up at episode 22, 24 today, also along with the episode on what your poop says about you. And I want to get into the 6th one though, which is the frequency, how often you urinate. So there are medications that are going to speed up how often you urinate. Often they have to do with blood pressure. Often they have to do with kidney-based issues, diuretics, etc. So you want to check that out. Prostate issues, as I mentioned before, will increase urinary your inability to hold your urine as much because you're getting a bit of a squeeze there on your urinary tract. Women with urinary tract infections, this goes for men as well, but women are just more prone to urinary tract infections than men are. Anyone with kidney issues, in my practice, since I work with a lot of people with gut issues, there might be an issue with the intestinal tract and they cannot absorb fructose very well. So anytime they have anything with fructose or a higher level, such as let's say a juice, they have to urinate every 20 minutes, right? Until all of that fructose is moved through their body. People with pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes may have to urinate more frequently, especially if they're consuming more sugar. Women during pregnancy, for various reasons, whether it be a squeeze on the bladder or whether it's something like streptococcus, right? Group B streptococcus, group B strep, all of those things play into it. I've got podcasts on group B strep, how we rebalance that naturally. Again, we're not talking about curing any disease, but that's something that we look at. And those are the main reasons for having to urinate too frequently. How often would too frequently be? Really hard for me to say. But if you are urinating once an hour, that's a bit too frequent. That's going to be more than the average person. If it's every couple hours, that's probably on track for most people. Again, if it becomes a burden, you're urinating more than once an hour, certainly that is not just like, urinated for 2 hours in the morning because that's when you hydrated the most. That's not abnormal. If it's literally once to twice an hour throughout the whole day, that's most likely an issue. You'll want to have your doctor check that out as well. All right, the last point I want to make is that I did a podcast on using urine dipsticks right at home. These are very useful. Again, I'm not saying, and you shouldn't do this, we don't want to play medical doctor here, but at home, they sell urine dipsticks. They're very, very simple. I've linked them up before. I will link up that podcast as well, teaching you how to read them. And it's only $10. I think they literally cost $10. And they will look for leukocytes if you have a urinary tract-based issue. They'll look for protein in the urine, which you certainly do not want to have. They'll look for ketone markers. They'll look for extra glucose in the urine. So they're pretty... they're great to have around. I've obviously had them in my clinical practice for well over a decade because I always tested people's urine in the office to look for all of these different things, just as early warning signs, but easy to have for you as well. You can pick them up online and I'll link up to them, or you can purchase them right at your local pharmacy store. Okay. So I will link all those up. Hopefully today's podcast was helpful. Again, all of the follow-up podcasts, previous, and maybe even future ones to come, we'll link up at stephencabral.com/2224. As I said, hopefully this was helpful. And if it was, please do feel free to share this show with anyone you believe it could serve. Take care, everyone.